Hey, my name is Lauren Owen. I'm the Vice President of Analytics here at Blue Moon Digital. I'm excited today to be walking through the Analytics 101 training with you. I'm going to go ahead and walk through our training deck, and I'll be hopping in and out of a couple different examples from clients. So I hope you enjoy, and here we go. So to get started with what we're going to be covering in our training, we're going to talk through what defines the analytics channel at Blue Moon Digital. We'll talk about the different roles that we have within the channel on our team. We'll talk about how we structure a channel when it comes to client contracts. Then I'll talk a little bit about the platforms and tools that we work with. And then I'll also go through a lot of highlights about what we do for clients. I always feel like the best way to learn something to see some real life examples. We'll have quite a few of those to go through to help illustrate some of the concepts we're covering. And then finally, I'll end with a quick summary of some top tips to help you at Blue Moon understand and make the most of our analytics services. So let's dive in here. So to cover our offering about what analytics is, I thought it was helpful to start with our department's mission statement, which we as a team crafted. I'm very proud of the thought and the energy that we put into our mission statement. And to summarize that, our mission statement is that we drive stakeholders to focus on the right business questions, and we provide answers via collection, analysis, and hypothesis testing of digital data. If you have been here for a while, you probably will recall a day, or you might have heard the term floated around of monthly web analytics reports, or MWARs. Our department has gone through a lot of evolution, hence the little animated graphic there of a digital evolution. And we used to be really focused on answering fairly basic questions. For whatever reason, be it the limitation and the understanding our clients had of how to read their data, the accessibility of the data, we spend a fair amount of time and energy answering fairly basic questions. Questions like, how much traffic did we get last month? Where did the traffic come from? And our channel has evolved dramatically through the past several years. Data is a lot easier to understand, and it's a lot easier to digest, and it's much more accessible thanks to BI platforms like Domo and changes to analytics interfaces themselves that really help business users be able to get quick answers to basic questions. And so we've evolved along with that, and our team is answering far more complex questions than we ever had before. And so really, if you think about the web analytics department, it's evolved beyond just web analytics, and it really is more analytics than just web analytics, even though about 90% of the work that we're doing really does revolve around the website. We kind of branched out by necessity for the complexity of questions we're answering. We oftentimes need to pull in data from other platforms, data from in-store sales, data from CRM platforms to be able to answer the questions that help drive our customers' business. So a huge part of what we do is answering business questions and helping our clients understand what are the right business questions to be asking to drive the question forward. If you thought about the ecosystem, I feel like a lot of people, when they think about analytics, think about it's just Google Analytics, right? And that's really a huge part of it. That's our preferred platform. We are a Google Analytics certified partner. And so when it comes to web analytics platforms, we do tend to prefer Google Analytics, and the entire team is trained on Google Analytics. But that's not the end all be all of analytics. Really, it is an entire ecosystem. And so it starts with data collection via tag management platform, preferably. And that is the control center where we can execute what we're going to collect on a website. The preferred platform that we utilize there is Google Tag Manager. And that data then sends information into the analytics platform. It also controls all of the tags that are firing for third-party marketing platforms, whether they're your floodlight tags or your Google search ads tags. Any of your display vendors, affiliates, those things can all be governed via tag management platform. So that's really at the core of how we get any of our data across web analytics platforms or marketing platforms. So that tag management component is huge. We spend a lot of time there making sure the data that we're collecting is complete and accurate. The analytics platform then itself is not the end all be all of data. Ideally, it's flowing back and forth between the marketing platforms. Within the Google marketing platform itself, one of the great integrations that Google Analytics has is the ability to create audience segments within Analytics and then syndicate those to Google Ads. So information that we collect about somebody's size preference or about somebody's categorical preference or gender preference, that all becomes fodder to really maximize the output and segmentation that you execute in the marketing platform. So it's a two-way street, really, between analytics and marketing platforms. Downstream, it's not the best visual interface for answering and creating more complex dashboards for business users. And so ideally, we get the data out of the analytics platform and into a space where it's easier to visualize. And that's usually done in Domo, ideally, which serves as both a warehouse and the actual visualization layer to serve as the BI platform. And then I think probably the most fun part is thinking about performance for a client's website and their digital program as a whole. If we notice that there's a KPI that's lagging, something's not meeting a goal, or it doesn't rise to the benchmark we expect for a specific metric, testing and personalization is really where we have an opportunity to try to impact that KPI. We can execute on-site tests. We can personalize the experience based on an audience definition or based on where somebody came from a specific paid search ad. Whatever we know about the person, we can actually modify the on-site experience to try to garner a better outcome. And that's where that testing and personalization layer comes in. So if you think about analytics, it is so much more than just Google Analytics, even though that tends to be the center of our universe where our data is flowing through. There's the actual upstream getting the data, and the downstream, what are we going to do with the data? How are we going to analyze it? And then what are we going to do to take action to try to improve the data? So it really is a complicated ecosystem, which is illustrated here. And the thing that I would take away from this is that analytics really is the governance across this ecosystem that's broken out into a measurement plan, which is first and foremost, what are we trying to achieve? What are our KPIs across this ecosystem? Are we trying to generate new users? Are we trying to, for an e-commerce business, drive revenue and margin? What are those top level objectives that we have, our purpose here? Secondly, what are those micro and macro conversions that help us assess the success of KPIs? So even though our overall objective might be sales, it's still helpful and it's a nice micro moment for somebody to sign up for email, because that means we can target them later to get them to make a sale. So there's a lot of micro moments that we need to also measure. And then ultimately, segments and audiences is very important to be able to govern that globally. So that way, when the analytics team is looking at on-site performance for shoppers who are tagged as sewing enthusiasts, if you're Joanne, the marketing team who's targeting sewing enthusiasts has the same definition and the same governance when we're talking about the outcomes on site for sewing enthusiasts and the targeting, reach, and success of that audience and marketing platforms as well. So really that analytics measurement plan serves as that governance across the whole ecosystem. Great. So let's talk a little bit about how we break down our team. So this is quite a busy slide. I included a link here. So when you're looking at this training deck, which I'm sure will be shared out, you'll be able to see this actual spreadsheet yourself. But essentially, I have a matrix for all the roles in our department. So all the way from analytics intern to coordinator. We've got 2 different levels of specialists, specialist level 1, specialist level 2, web analytics strategist, senior analytics strategist, the manager of analytics, director of analytics, senior director, and vice president of analytics. And across this range of roles that we have on the team, there's a lot of different autonomy and responsibility that comes with each of these roles. And that's mapped out here with a little grid from team members who have full autonomy. They don't have any real oversight needed to perform specific tasks, all the way up to somebody who does not do these things. So most of the team does not engage in staff management. But this matrix outlines essentially how responsible a role is for specific activities, split across client work, client interactions, sales support and upselling, consulting, training, process setting and contracts, escalation, and staff management. If you want to take a look and see just a little bit more detail, you're more than welcome to click through and view this on our SharePoint site. So let's talk a little bit about what that analyst does. Now, you'll probably be aware from other trainings that analytics fits within the Analytics and Insights department. So we are housed together with the client services team, and we work very closely with the client services team. We're oftentimes paired together in a service that's called Insights and Analytics. Um, and the way that that basically functions is that an account director or digital strategist sits on the account as the main point of contact, helping the client understand forecasting, their brand goals, retail insights, serving as a consultant. And they're oftentimes paired with somebody on the analytics team, help fuel and answer those questions with some data driven answers. I'm going to hone in a little bit on specifics around what that digital analyst does. I know I alluded to it earlier on our ecosystem slide, but the digital analyst essentially is responsible for data collection. That's deciding what we're going to measure and executing those tags to measure that. And they're also responsible for auditing continually to make sure that data is correct. And we have a couple different partners that we use sometimes to help automate the auditing and monitoring processes, a tool like ObservePoint. But ultimately they're responsible to making sure we have the right data and it's accurate, and actually executing anything that might be missing or a gap. And the analysis phase is understanding once that data is flowing, what is it telling us? So we're going to visualize that. Most oftentimes we're going to be doing that in Tomo, but sometimes other tools at client preference. We'll be doing a lot of ad hoc analysis as clients go through the seasons, and they plan for new releases or new launches of product. A lot of questions come up ad hoc to help them plan for how to make the most success of whatever upcoming activities they have on site. And so we do field a lot of questions around product performance, merchandising performance, to help our teams on the e-commerce side get ahead of what they're planning. So there's a lot of ad hoc things that will come up that we don't necessarily have planned, but we're the go-to resource to answer questions as they crop up. We're also looking for UX opportunities. So a lot of times within measurement planning, we'll capture very granular data about how people are browsing a website, whether or not they use size guides, whether or not they interact with PLP filters to filter by size or filter by color. All of those little micro actions that people take on the site really help us understand if there are potential UX issues on the site. So we're oftentimes tagging out if people experience error messages that will appear if you try to proceed with a coupon that's not valid, or you haven't entered your billing address correctly. All of those events really help us identify, wow, 10% of people who go through checkout experience this error. And we can now see, because it's tagged that way, that 25% of them leave the site altogether. They just give up. So we're able to analyze a lot of the data that we're collecting and identify areas where there is a potential UX issue. And on the analysis side, we're also slicing and dicing performance by audience and segments. So we're oftentimes able to, with the data that we're collecting, segment customers who have a very high frequency of orders. So we'll oftentimes have access to the actual order count for customers to be able to slice by the behaviors for people who have 5 or more orders in their history versus people who this is their first order. We can slice by gender, we can slice by device. A lot of times performance in aggregate might look fine, but that doesn't mean there aren't pockets of opportunity where we might be able to improve the experience for a subset, either by device, channel, or other demographic attribute. So we spend a lot of time really diving and slicing into the data and helping push that into audience plans. And then finally, after we've done this analysis, so we've identified there might be some UX issues, or there might be opportunities to treat a specific audience or segment differently through a personalized experience, either on site or in marketing. We get to the testing phase, is that let's do something about it. So we help do a lot of tool vetting, although we definitely have our own preferences around tools. I'm personally very fond of Google Optimize because it is free. It's a great way to get customers started if they don't already have an A/B testing program to install Google Optimize. It's quick and easy to install and has a free version. So we sometimes spend time helping customers pick the right tool for them. And then we oftentimes start out with a conversion rate optimization roadmap, which is taking a look at the synthesis of all of the UX data that we see, that we have identified as potential red flags, and putting together a roadmap that's prioritized by how much impact we can have. So if it's an issue that 10% of people can't check out, that's probably our first priority because it's really low in the funnel. People have a high intent to purchase, and if we can improve that hurdle, it's likely to have a huge revenue impact. And so we'll sort our roadmap usually by high impact, low effort to kind of find the sweet spot for quick wins, and then go from there based on effort and impact. And then our team actually gets to do the design work. So we have a lot of experience on the team actually going through and making HTML, CSS, and JavaScript changes on behalf of our clients. That's not to say that we are developers. We are not full-blown developers. I will say that caveat right here, right now. But the team does an excellent job with a lot of changes. About 75% of the changes that we're making, we make ourselves without the assistance of a development team. So things like changing the order in which slider carousels appear based on what audience you're in, or adjusting the order in which content appears on a product listing page to emphasize more important details. Switching orders, adding new images, swapping images, changing formatting. Those are all things that our team can execute on behalf of our clients without involving the development team, which is great. Helps us be really agile and move quickly for our clients. And then ultimately, any test that we run or any personalization that we launch, we like to be able to report back on what impact that had from an incrementality standpoint, which I'll get into when we talk a little bit more about client examples. So in a nutshell, that's the type of service that we're offering across collection, analysis, and testing. So how do we charge for our services? Because hopefully you're picking up on the fact that we do a lot. So in terms of how we charge for our services, all hours, except for when we're trying to upsell or working on a sales initiative, are billable. Our SOWs are of two main types. The first type being a project or a set of hours with a finite set of hours. So when somebody is going to be cutting over their website and they want to make sure that they have their measurement in place and some analysis to help them understand how the new site's performing, somebody might come to us for that specific project. We'll scope it out and say, okay, client, we think that that'll be about 150 hours. We always include an hours cap though. There are a lot of unexpected questions that can arise. Scope can creep. So we always like to make sure that our time is covered because our time is valuable. As everybody in the company's time is valuable, we like to really ensure that we are protected from overages. The second type of SOW is an ongoing project that has a set of hours per month or per quarter that renews itself. So Joanne Fabrics is a good example of that. We have a set number of hours per quarter, and every quarter we get a new set of hours. And we're always trying to be very transparent with our clients about the hours that we're using, where they're going, and if we're at risk of running out. So that way the client can approve or say no, hold. So we never want it to be a surprise for a client when we get to the end of a period and we say hours are gone. We try to be really transparent with that. We have a lot of dashboards set up in Domo so clients can see the hours reporting directly from MavenLink. Because if they approve more hours, then that's billable too. So we just want to make sure our time is covered, and that is how we structure our arrangements with clients. Great. So that's in a nutshell the overarching gist of our service. I will talk really briefly about the tools and the platforms that we are utilizing today most commonly. So I broke that down into kind of those core areas that we were talking about with the addition of site operations, because we do spend a fair amount of time there as well as a Shopify partner. But I'll start left to right. On the collection side, I mentioned Google Tag Manager. It is definitely our preferred tool from a tag management perspective. When I get into some of the client examples, we'll dive a little bit more into what Google Tag Manager can do. I also included Telium and Insighten, and as that they are tag management platforms that we have access to for clients and have on occasion had clients who were using Telium or using Insighten. It is definitely not our preferred tool, but we are tool agnostic when it comes to tag management platforms. And so if you have a client you're working with who is just adamant that they love Telium or they love Insight and they don't necessarily want to change, that's okay. That's not a deal breaker by any means. We just have definitely a strong preference for things within the Google marketing platform. And the same thing on the analytics side. So our big preference really is Google Analytics as a Google Analytics certified partner. But we also do have team members who've gone through Adobe Analytics training. It is a great platform as well. It just has its different pros and cons, and is definitely not the core of our client base today. Is on Google Analytics. Which has, just in case everybody did not know, there's a paid version of Google Analytics called Google Analytics 360, which has very comparable features to Adobe Analytics. And if you'd like to see a comparison of Adobe Analytics versus Google Analytics 360, we have a great comparison chart that I can send out a link to. On the analysis side, as I mentioned earlier, we do most of our work in Domo. It's a very easy interface to use, and it's great because we can collaborate with our clients there and build things that are interactive. So that way, as they're looking through data dashboards, they might have questions and want to drill down. The drilling and interactivity functionality in Domo is really top notch. So, 90% of the time we're working in Domo. Not to say that we don't have some clients who, for whatever reason, have a very strong preference to using Google Data Studio. And we definitely have a couple clients currently who are very big Google Data Studio users. Our team has good experience with that as well. It is limited in terms of what it can do, especially on the data preparation side of things. So it sometimes can be limiting. We can't do all the things that we're used to doing in Domo. But if you're answering questions just with data within the Google marketing platform, they obviously have pretty good connections and connectivity with other tools like GA or BigQuery. BigQuery is another one that I mentioned, and that anybody who's paying for Google Analytics 360 or anybody who is using a Google Analytics 4 property has the ability to send all of their Google Analytics data, the raw data, to BigQuery, which is an SQL environment that keeps track of all of the raw hit data. So click by click page views with timestamps. It's everything raw captured in Google BigQuery. So if you want to do some more advanced analytics, like understanding the average time in seconds that it takes from somebody to start checkout to finish checkout, that's really going to be your source of data for that granularity. If you need to aggregate things down to the second level, BigQuery is a great source for that. Or if you're just a really large site and you just have millions of rows of data and you're encountering sampling all the time in the interface, it might make sense to use BigQuery as a raw source and do that aggregation either in BigQuery or in Domo. On the optimization, A/B testing, personalization side of things, as I mentioned, really fond of Google Optimize. We also work with Monotate, which is now owned by Kibo. So you'll see there's probably a newer logo out there called Kibo Monotate. We have clients that use that, including all the VF brands. And then we have a newer partnership with an amazing tool called Dynamic Yield. And Dynamic Yield is so much more than just an A/B testing tool. It really is a personalization first kind of mentality. So it integrates with audience management platforms like Telium or pretty much any major audience platform or CDP there is out there integrates with Dynamic Yield. So you can really tailor product recommendations and like the entire site experience based on audience definitions. So it has a huge benefit from that product personalization standpoint. And then, as I mentioned, Shopify. We are a Shopify partner, and a lot of our e-commerce clients who are on Shopify end up needing help along the way with doing their tagging. Shopify has an out-of-the-box solution for tracking Google Analytics enhanced e-commerce, but it doesn't really capture everything. All the merchandising reports, like product lists, come out of the box in Shopify. So our team has done a really great job putting together a standard set of theme updates that we can implement on behalf of our Shopify clients to fully enable our enhanced e-commerce tracking for them, which is definitely light years above what you get out of the box. So we do have our own partner instance where we have our storefront that we can develop in, and it gives us a great advantage when we're working with Shopify clients, and that we have comfort and experience with going in to edit the site data directly. Oh, there are definitely more tools that we work with. We're a pretty tool agnostic bunch, even though I talk up our relationship with Google all the time. We are always willing to learn a new tool if it's a new player in the space. So if you have a client that you're working with who has a different tool for one of these functions, that is a-okay. It does not preclude anybody from working with us. Great. Well, I know I've been chatting away for a while, and I mentioned the best way to really show how we do things is to get some examples up. So I'm going to be moving into that here shortly. Just wanted to talk a little bit about how day to day our team is functioning in terms of the skills that our team has. I know we went over that matrix earlier about roles and responsibilities, but essentially at any given time, based on the project that our team is working on, uh, first and foremost, our team has lots of skills like beyond these four core areas. But any project that we're working on really draws a lot from these four areas. And our team is very strong in these areas. And I would categorize them as development skills. So understanding HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and being able to execute within a tag management platform. That's obviously a core skill that we have. The analysis skills, understanding the BI platforms, how to use them, being able to manipulate data to get the answers and get the data in a format ready to visualize, and having a basic understanding of statistics. So when we're understanding the outcomes from a test, we understand, do we have a big enough sample? Do we have enough data? Is this significant? And then user experience helps us identify if we see something in the data, we put our UX hats on and understand, is there something about the layout that's confusing or could be problematic given specific device types? And how could we structure a test to change something in a way that could be impactful? And then ultimately, this is where we have this really close relationship with client services. Our team has to function as a digital consultant, somebody who has experience in the marketing channels that we work with, since we're obviously always exposed to and analyzing the outcomes of your marketing channels in terms of what they drive, what conversions KPIs did they drive. So having channel expertise and having industry expertise, usually in retail, but also across B2B and pharma, having the ability to point out to the client at any time, oh, have you thought about measuring this? Because I think that you should. Most of our other clients in this vertical do. So just as we go through, I wanted to talk about these core skills, and really our team has to draw from each of these areas on every different project. So let's get started with some examples. The first example is going to start off with measurement planning and execution. And this is a really broad topic. I could spend a long time talking about this, but I'll try to go quickly. Essentially, Lucky Brand, who's part of Spark family of brands, came to us and they're launching a brand new site. And they said, we have this old instance of GA. We don't really know that the data in there is that great. We've never really done a whole lot with it except for the basic data. They started out asking us, what data should we capture that will help us make decisions later? And that's really at the crux of measurement planning. It's trying to foresee the questions that you're going to ask so you can make sure you have the data ready to answer it when the time comes. So I'm going to hop over to a document that is particularly impactful. It's one of the documents that we utilize for all clients that we're working with. And it's called Web Analytics Measurement Plan. It outlines information about the site, KPIs for the site, and then specifically what I'm going to talk a little bit about here are the custom dimensions and metrics, as well as events. This is what I was alluding to earlier when I said we can creepily track all the little things that you're doing on the website. That all kind of rolls into these custom dimensions and these events. So with the Google Analytics 360 implementation, clients have a lot of custom dimensions available that they can utilize. I believe it's 200. 200, yes. So there's a lot of dimensions and metrics that you can use to tailor what the data can be broken down by. So for example, when I was working with Lucky, we thought about how a question comes up all the time for retailers. How many times have you guys heard a client say, oh, the site's not doing very well right now because we have an inventory issue. So I want to make sure we have a lot of data points to be able to answer the question, okay, is it really an inventory issue? And so dimensions like stock status, whether or not something is in stock or out of stock, really help us understand if we see over time X percentage of all product detail views are for products that are out of stock, we can monitor that as a benchline and say, yes, we expect 5% of all PDP views are going to be on out of stock stuff. And if we see that start to rise, then yes, it jives with the story of we have an inventory problem. But if we don't see that, then we can challenge that assertion with data. So it's helpful to have these custom dimensions, to be able to slice by sales of new versus old product, whether things are on promo, whether we're selling regular sizes or extended sizes, which is what Lucky calls their plus size inventory. We can break down how people are paying for their orders. We can understand for people who are putting things in the cart, are they doing it from the quick view or are they doing it from the full PDP, etc. So there's a lot of planning that goes into what are these dimensions and metrics that we're going to record that will help us be able to slice the data later to answer questions. What's the dimensionality of what describes a product or what describes a specific interaction that you're having on the site? Next is the actual interactions. Those are tracked via events. And here you can see we have a large table. Font is very small. You might not be able to read this super well, but essentially we have event categories that kind of are focused on a specific area of the site. So we try to organize them so that way, if you want to understand in the data all of the interactions people are taking on the home page, or people that are taking navigational actions, or people are interacting with the product detail page or the product listing page, they all get grouped together in kind of a logical way. So you can hone in specifically, let's say, on PDP interactions and understand how many people open the size guide or close the size guide or expand the product details or collapse the product details, or they add it to the favorites or they remove it from the favorites, they share the product. They use the buy online, pick up in store check button on the product. All of these interactions really help us understand how people are engaging with the content beyond just loading the page. And so there's a lot of time and energy that goes into identifying the issues that people might have and how we can make sure we have data to tell us if those things are issues, if they're correlated with high conversion or correlated with poor conversion. It starts by tracking. That's a measurement plan in a nutshell. And I could show you very, very briefly inside of their site. This is a preview version of the site that's about to launch. We're using Google Tag Manager to capture these things. So on the product listing page, as I mentioned, we wanted to understand how people are utilizing these filters over here to understand which one is most commonly used. Are people more commonly filtering by size, or are they more commonly filtering by color or by price? If we see after the site launches that price is the most common thing that people are filtering by, which you can see here, my event fired, so I could track that people were clicking on PLP prices under 25. If that ends up being the most commonly clicked on thing, we might recommend to the client that they reorder this. So that way they put the most popular filters at the top. So that way people don't miss that it's there if that really is the most popular and it's correlated with the conversion. That's just a quick example of the work that we've done to help measure how Lucky Site is doing. And as a quick example here, this is Google Tag Manager, where we actually execute all of those tagging elements. So on my refine by facets, like I just did, I picked the price under $25. This is the actual event setup that fires and collects that data. So you can see I've got some custom JavaScript that we wrote to be able to dynamically get the price that I clicked on. And I have a trigger here that is set to go off when I'm matching the actual refinement IDs within the DOM. So you have to do a little bit of JavaScript with this job sometimes and have a good understanding of CSS and HTML. So that's measurement planning in a nutshell. There's a lot that we track because we get a lot of questions later and we want to make sure that we have the data to answer it. Great. I'm going to hop back to the presentation and we'll get back to beyond measurement planning after we have the actual data. What are some types of example analysis that we do? I pulled one together that was recent from Joanne Fabrics. They were asking a couple questions to try to help them understand for their next big buys into licensed character fabric. Think of like Baby Yoda fabric and team fabric. Think whatever your favorite football team is in fabric. Um, they have different margin structures for licensed and team fabrics, having to pay royalties. So it wanted to understand how people are shopping for them. Are people getting to those by browsing, just going right through the navigation, using the menus to filter? Are they searching for these products because they're hard to find? Or are they doing a combination of searching and browsing? So they wanted to understand how that compared to other products. And then they also wanted to understand that when people are visiting these character and team shops where they have like the special merchandised pages for team apparel, fabric, and licensed characters, what else do they have in their cart? Like, what else are they interested in? So we did this all in Domo. I have the screenshots here. We found some interesting takeaways in that when people were shopping for team fabric, they were much more likely to search than they were compared to people who were searching for licensed character fabric. And the same thing for, on the flip side, shoppers for the licensed characters were more likely to browse from PvP recommendations. So it seemed like the people who were searching for a team were more driven to just search for the team. Whereas we found that there was a lot more cross browsing going on with people who were looking for a character fabric. And then we also found, in terms of browsing behavior, we kind of took it one step further to answer their question and found that through our measurement planning, we have an understanding as you view a page or you view a product, how many other tabs you have open for the site to see and gauge how much comparison shopping are you doing. And we can see that the rates of comparison shopping was much higher also for people who were shopping for licensed fabrics, whereas people who were shopping for team fabrics, much more likely to just have one tab open. So we're picking up on a sense here that people who are shopping for teams fabrics are more directed, less browsing, and less comparison. So that kind of helps paint the picture a little bit about the mentality for these two different types of shoppers. Other question that they had is what else is in the cart when they come to browse these types of products? What else do they have in their cart? What else are they interested in? What's the kind of cross affinity for other types of products? And so most of the people who visit the licensed characters fabric have fabric already in their cart. And in terms of the second most common type of product that they have in their cart were face mask protection supplies. So the licensed character fabrics, the Lilo and Stitches, the Baby Yodas, the Barbie, it seemed like the second highest affinity that they had was for making face masks out of those fabrics. And so the inference that we can have here is that a lot of the behavior and traffic for people shopping for this licensed character fabric might have been to turn it into face masks, which makes sense. If you're going to make your kid wear a face mask, it might as well be Lilo and Stitch or Cars or whatever your kid's into. Yeah, we could see that correlation here. And on the flip side, when we looked at the team fabrics of people who are interested in teams, the most common type of fabric was quilting, and most people were looking for like home decor and holiday. Face masks and protection supplies were there, but were definitely not as prevalent as with kids. So the team could use this information to make some inferences around shopping. We could understand that the team shoppers were less likely to just go browsing for it. So if we really wanted to drive team sales, we have to rely on some more prominent messages to get people to shop teams. And the same with the licensed character shoppers. We understood that they were doing a lot of comparison shopping and that they seemed to have a high correlation with people making face masks. So any of the face mask call outs or content on the site around that, we understood that we could feature licensed character fabrics and have a good chance of resonating with shoppers if we're featuring those types of fabrics for making face masks. So just some quick examples there of how we utilized some of the data we were collecting to answer those questions for their team. Last example that I have is the like, okay, what are we going to do about it? So in that last example, really, it was up to the Joanne team to make some different call to actions and messages on the site. This example was great because we actually got to do something on the site and change things up. So we noticed on Ultra Running that the add to cart rate was much lower for them versus other e-commerce sites that sell shoes. And so it said to us, aha, there might be an actual usability issue or something that we can improve to get them more in line with what we would typically see for a cart to detail rate. So we hypothesized that drawing attention to the most liked reviews might actually hinder the conversion rate. I'll show you an example here. On their website, they use the default implementation of Power Reviews. Power Reviews by default will give you this review snapshot, which includes a little section here of the most liked positive review versus the most liked negative review. So it really draws attention to the negative reviews. And we thought, maybe that's not a great thing to draw attention. We don't want to remove negative reviews. We don't want to, erase them from existence, but we maybe don't need to make them quite as prominent. But let's see if it helps or it hinders. So we put together a test in Google Optimize to essentially, for half of the traffic at random, we would hide that section. So you just see reviewed by 43 customers, and then it'd jump right into the reviews, sorted by most recent. So we weren't even trying to game the system here to show the most positive at the top. We were letting it still be most recent and just hiding that big old, everybody liked this most negative thing where the shoe fell apart. And it was very impactful. So the results here after we ran the test was essentially that we could see for our primary KPI, which was getting people to add something to the cart, we had reached a 91% probability that removing that would help add to cart rates. And ultimately, beyond even add cart rates, the conversion rate was definitely significantly improved. We saw 96% probability that we would improve the conversion rate anywhere between 0 and 10%. In the calculations that we did, we found the midpoint there of being 6%. And if we did that kind of hypothesis, what if every day we did have this kind of lift going on, it essentially equates to a $300-400 a day incremental driver of revenue for them by making this change. So always feels great when you can go for a full circle, you collect the data, you understand how people are behaving on the site. You see the data call out to you of this KPI doesn't meet benchmarks. And you put together a hypothesis to say, what could I do to fix it? And it works. That's what being on the analytics team is all about. Really helping answer questions and move the business forward. So that's in a nutshell our analytics services. I realize I've been talking for a while now. I'll just part here with some tips, things that people have mentioned that were helpful that you may or may not have known to help you become a part-time analyst. The first is debugging tools. We love these. These make it really easy if you're not familiar with how to check if something is or is not tracked, or what kind of tools people have on their site. I highlighted a couple here. One's called Ghostery. It's intended to be like an ad blocker that allows you to block things from firing. But it's also really cool from a pre-sale standpoint because you can not have it block the things, but tell you all the things. And it's really helpful to be able to understand, this person has monotate on their site because Ghostery, will share that the monotate tag tried to fire. So that's really helpful. If you want to understand just specifically if your vendor or a specific tool has fired tags, there's a Facebook Pixel helper, which is really helpful. Criteo has a plugin where you can understand if the Criteo tags fired correctly. And Google Tag Assistant has a tool where you can see if things like Google Analytics or Floodlight tags have fired correctly. But really, my favorite tool is called Omnibug. And Omnibug is kind of those one tool to rule them all. And I hop back into Chrome here. You can see I have that running here. And essentially, Omnibug looks for all of these tools. So if ever you're wondering, I wonder if that data is being collected or if this tag is installed right for my vendor, you can come here and you can look and see for Bing ads or for Criteo or for Facebook, Google Ads, DoubleClick, LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of different tools here that this one tool can tell you. Did it fire when you thought it would? When somebody signed up for email or filled the form out or made a purchase, did your vendor tag get the data correctly? This is a really, really helpful tool. So I highly recommend Omnibug. You can just get that in the Chrome extension store. Hop back into our slides here. Um, Also, one other thing I will share is that the analytics team has a really nice Confluence space. So if you wanted to understand a little bit more about some of our processes, some of which I highlighted here, there's a training video that's about 45 minutes long, just on how to go about doing a pre-sales audit. So all of the things that you could look for in your own client base to understand, are there big gaps in our analytics measurement, things that are erroneous or problematic, or just big opportunities. So you're more than welcome. Anybody in the company should be able to access that workspace and check out some of the cool processes that we have documented there, which the team does a really great job continually updating as we develop new processes and guides. So check it out. And then finally, final note, we are here for you. So there's a lot that we can look at, we can help with, and there is a Teams channel that we set up called the Rack, which is the repository for account and channel knowledge. If anybody didn't know why it's called Rack, repository for account and channel knowledge. And there's a channel in there for web analytics. So if you do have a question about web analytics and it's for an account where you don't have an analyst currently assigned, you can definitely go feel free to ask a question there. Everybody on the analytics team will see that, and whoever might have time first or availability to answer your question should get back to you there. And it's nice too, because you can always search through the history of all the other questions people have asked. So it serves not only as a space where we can answer your questions, but it's also a repository where anybody in the company can see all the previous questions that other team members have asked. So that's that. I'll go ahead and stop this now. And thank you very much for the time. I hope that was a helpful overview of our analytics channel and all of the ways that we're working to help our clients today. If you have any questions, don't feel free or don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks so much.